On a quiet Georgia street, a 12-year-old girl named Ava built a humble juice stand to fund her college dreams. But when a violent biker gang rolled in with gas cans and threats, her future nearly went up in flames, until a 76-year-old nutritionist named Maye Musk stepped in with nothing but her wit, a smartwatch, and the courage to fight back. What happened next shocked the entire neighborhood, and turned into a national lesson on dignity, justice, and resilience. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. The late afternoon sun pressed down on the cracked sidewalk outside Oak Ridge Community Center, where the scent of roasted chickpeas and mint still lingered in the air. Inside, the last of the folding chairs scraped back as a dozen seniors rose, clutching tote bags stuffed with health brochures and fruit samples. At the front of the room, Maye Musk closed her laptop with a gentle snap. She adjusted the collar of her white blazer and smiled warmly. "Your plate is your pharmacy," she said. "Start there, and the rest will follow." A small wave of applause followed, polite but sincere. An older woman with arthritic hands waited patiently as Maye signed a copy of her book, her name looping elegantly across the title page. The woman clutched the book like it was made of gold. Just outside the building, Dr. Marcus Green leaned against a concrete column, one arm hooked casually over a cooler of leftover produce. He was broad-shouldered, still upright with marine discipline, but the easy smile on his face betrayed the softness Maye had always admired in him. "Walk you out," he offered. "Only if you carry the kale," she replied, and they stepped into the heat together. 2 blocks down, past a church bulletin board and a barbershop with its windows fogged from the inside, something caught Maye's eye. A small stand, built from pallet wood and painted teal, stood at the edge of a quiet front lawn. A hand-painted sign read, "Heart Smart Hydration, $1 a cup." Behind it stood a girl no older than 12, her Braves cap tilted forward to shield her eyes from the sun, a red marker still tucked behind one ear. Maye slowed. "That's either lemonade or ambition." Marcus chuckled. "Could be both." The girl straightened as they approached. "Afternoon. Want to try the best watermelon mint juice in Georgia?" "Let's test that claim," Maye said. She took a cup. The juice was cold, bright, and kissed with fresh mint. It was shockingly good. "What's your name?" Marcus asked. "Ava," she said. "Ava Brooks." "You running a summer hustle?" Ava hesitated, then lifted her chin. "I'm saving for college. My mom's working double shifts at the diner and I want to make sure she never has to co-sign a loan for me. I figured if I start early." Maye glanced at Marcus. Something flickered between them, a recognition of the kind of determination you couldn't teach. "I like that plan," Maye said softly. She pulled out her phone and tapped into a scholarship app. "Let's accelerate it." Within moments, a transfer confirmed on the screen. $12,000, deposited into a 529 plan under Ava's name. The girl stared. "Wait, what?" "You just earned your first real grant," Maye said. "And I'm adding a full nutrition course license, if you're interested." Ava's eyes filled but didn't spill. She nodded, her voice catching in her throat. "Thank you." Marcus was quiet, but his gaze had drifted toward the edge of the yard. In the gravel near the curb, dark streaks burned into the asphalt like skid marks. And on a nearby utility pole, a fading sticker curled at the edges, a coiled fang logo with the words Iron Fang Biker Club. He narrowed his eyes. "Maye," he said, voice low. "That mark on the road?" She turned her head slightly, reading his tone more than his words. Then she looked back at Ava, who had started stacking her cups again, her hands still trembling from disbelief. The air had shifted. Somewhere between inspiration and unease, something else had crept in, something neither Maye nor Marcus could name just yet. Above them, the Heart Smart sign bobbed gently in the warm wind, its corners tugged by a breeze that didn't feel like celebration. It felt like a warning. The hum of a lawnmower buzzed faintly from across the street as Ava reset her stack of compostable cups, still reeling from what had just happened. Her fingers were steadier now, but her chest hadn't stopped fluttering. She kept glancing toward the sidewalk where Maye and Marcus stood, as if making sure this wasn't some kind of dream. The $12,000 miracle felt like a fairy tale taped to her chest. She didn't want to blink and find it gone. Then, the sound came. Low at first, like distant thunder on dry pavement. A vibration in the air. Marcus turned his head, the movement sharp and instinctive. May didn't need to ask, she heard it too. Ava looked up just as 6 motorcycles rounded the corner, engines grumbling like beasts not yet fed. Their chrome frames gleamed under the sinking sun, scuffed leather jackets rippling with motion. They didn't slow down until they reached the edge of Ava's lawn. One by one, they killed their engines. The stillness that followed was somehow louder. The tallest among them swung off his bike first. Bald head. Coiled snake tattoo crawling up his neck. His boots hit the pavement like punctuation marks. His eyes scanned the stand. The cups. The wooden sign. Then May. Then Ava. Well, well, he said, voice scraping like dry gravel. Looks like we've got ourselves a little Wall Street startup out here. Another biker chuckled, tossing a toothpick between his lips. $1 for flavored water. That's called robbery where I come from. Ava straightened. It's fresh juice. And it's $1. That's the price. One of them, a man with a jagged scar splitting his eyebrow, muttered, "Moody little thing, huh?" Another stepped closer and knocked his knuckles on the table. "So what's all this about scholarship money? Heard someone just got a golden ticket." Ava's body tensed. Marcus stepped forward slightly, posture relaxed but ready. "Afternoon. Gentlemen. I suggest you move on." The bald man raised a brow. "You suggesting we're not welcome to sample a little neighborhood entrepreneurship?" "No," Marcus said calmly. "I'm telling you to pay before touching anything." There was a beat of silence. Then, without warning, one of the bikers reached over the stand and grabbed Ava's wrist, jerking her arm away from the counter. Another snatched for the sleek silver Visa card resting beside the juice jug. Ava twisted back, nearly falling, clutching the card to her chest just in time. Her breathing quickened. Her eyes darted to May. That was all she needed. May tapped the side of her smartwatch twice. At first, nothing happened. Then, all at once, the entire street came alive. A series of clicks echoed like a chain reaction. Security floodlights burst to life, one house, then the next, then a third, until the entire street glowed under harsh, white illumination. Porch-mounted Ring cameras whirred, their little blue lights blinking to life. One across the street zoomed in automatically, framing the scene like a surveillance still. The bikers froze. Ava stood still too, not out of fear now, but out of disbelief. Her block had just turned into a public stage. The bald man's smirk faltered. He stepped back, scanning the lenses that stared back at him from every direction. May didn't move. She simply stood there, calm, chin raised, eyes locked on his. "You're live," she said. "Might want to smile." "Lady," the man growled, "you got no idea who you're messing with." "No," she said. "You don't." He looked at her for a long second. Something in his jaw ticked. Then, with a scoff, he turned on his heel. "Let's go," he barked. The others hesitated, but followed. One biker lingered a beat longer, his eyes narrowing on Ava, then May. Then he spat on the grass and revved his engine. Tires squealed as the 6 of them tore away, taillights burning red down the block. Silence fell again, but it didn't settle quite the same way. Ava slowly loosened her grip on the card. Her hands were shaking. Marcus exhaled through his nose, watching the dust cloud rise. May didn't look away from the corner they'd disappeared behind. Just before vanishing completely, the bald man turned once more, his voice slicing through the quiet like a dull knife. "This ain't over, Grandma." And then he was gone. The bar smelled like sweat, diesel, and disappointment. Its neon sign flickered half-dead against the dusk, casting a sickly red glow over a row of chipped stools and mismatched tables. Inside, 6 leather-clad men huddled around a corner booth, their jackets creaking as they leaned in. Rex Dobbs sat at the center, a full pint untouched in front of him. "He wasn't here to drink. She made us look weak," one of them muttered, biting off the end of a toothpick. "That old bat and her Ring cameras." "Whole street lit up like a stadium," said another. "I couldn't see for 10 seconds. Rex didn't blink. He reached beneath the table and set something down with a soft thunk. A red plastic can, half full, with a taped label reading premium. Next to it, a Zippo lighter. "She wants a show," he said, voice even. "We'll give her one." No one laughed. No one needed to. Outside, the night crawled across the neighborhood, slow and deliberate. But at the edge of Briarwood Street, the mood was anything but still. Inside Ava's house, the air was tight with tension. Monica Brooks paced the living room, still in her diner apron, the hem stained with coffee and stress. She glanced between Maye, Marcus, and the front window like she was trying to calculate how far away danger could be. "They're coming back," she said. "You saw their faces. You heard him." "We did," Maye replied calmly. "Which is why we're not just going to wait." Marcus spread out a hand-drawn layout of Ava's front yard on the coffee table. On it were scribbled notes, angles of security lights, camera blind spots, power sources. He'd mapped the property like a tactician preparing a base. "I've already alerted a patrol unit," he said. "They'll increase drive-bys tonight. And I've got backup cameras coming from my cousin's place." Motion triggered. 1080p. Monica looked unconvinced. "And what happens when lights and cameras aren't enough?" Maye glanced at Ava, who stood near the doorway, arms crossed tightly over her chest. "Then we show them this neighborhood doesn't fold," Maye said. Together, they stepped outside. The juice stand had been dismantled earlier in the afternoon, but its pieces now lay across the lawn like the bones of something ready to be rebuilt. Marcus lifted a plank, hammer in hand. Ava fetched a fresh bucket of compostable cups. Maye carried a bag of zip ties and motion sensors. Word spread quietly. A neighbor from 2 houses down stepped outside with an extension cord. Another offered her floodlight. Someone loaned a generator. By 8:30 p.m., the stand stood again, stronger, fortified with thicker wood, a metal frame anchored into the soil. String lights looped above it like festival decor, but this was no party. Ava worked silently, her marker moving across the smooth rim of each paper cup with careful precision. She didn't speak as she wrote the same line again and again. "Pass the kindness on." It wasn't just a message. It was a shield. Maye watched her, then turned back toward the street. The neighborhood had changed since morning. Porches were occupied. Screens were cracked open. A stillness had taken hold, not from fear, but from preparation. At 9:15, the wind picked up slightly. Leaves rustled along the curb. A cat darted beneath a car. The air tasted faintly of oil and iron. Marcus stepped to the center of the lawn and tested the motion sensor with a wave of his hand. Lights burst to life in sequence. Porch to tree to stand. Each one flawless. Each one timed. Maye adjusted the focus of the central ring camera. Ava taped a handwritten list of safety contacts to the back of the stand. Monica locked the front gate and held the key like it was a final word. Then, for a moment, everything stilled. No voices. No lights. Just the hum of readiness. Ava stood at the counter once again, her fingers tracing the wood edge, now smoothed and reinforced. Her cup sat beside her, the words on its side glowing under the string lights. Marcus walked the perimeter, silent but alert. Maye didn't move from her spot on the porch. And then, the sound came back. The same low growl. Familiar. Mean. 6 engines somewhere in the dark, approaching slow. The fight wasn't over. It was just about to begin. The roar came closer, and this time, it didn't slow. The 6 motorcycles tore down Briarwood Street like thunder on wheels, their headlights slicing through the dark. Ava's heart pounded as the beams grew larger, then blinked out as the riders cut their engines in unison, coasting the final yards in eerie silence. Rex Dobbs dismounted first. He wore the same snake-eyed stare, the same coiled tension in his shoulders, but something had shifted. There was no mocking grin this time. No lazy taunt. His boots hit the ground hard, and when he reached for the red plastic can hanging from his stall bag, no one laughed. Gasoline. He set it down in the middle of Ava's lawn and pulled off the cap with a twist. Maye stepped forward, her voice cutting clean and even through the air. "You don't want to do that." But Rex wasn't listening. He lifted the can, tilted it forward, and began to pour. The thick chemical scent hit instantly. It soaked into the grass in a dark streak leading straight to the stand. Marcus was already moving. He crossed the yard in 5 long strides and grabbed the base of the can, yanking it out of Rex's grip. The two men struggled for a second, until Marcus lost his footing and slipped on the wet ground, falling hard on one knee. The gas can rolled away, landing near the curb. One of the other bikers stepped forward, pulled a silver Zippo from his pocket, and struck it once. Ava didn't hesitate. Her thumb hit the remote in her palm. In a single synchronized wave, the entire block erupted in light. Floodlights snapped on from every porch, their beams overlapping in a cascade of white. The LED strings above the stand blazed to full intensity. Ring cameras blinked blue and began recording in high-definition silence. The bikers were caught under a dozen eyes, frozen in digital memory. The man holding the lighter flinched, blinking furiously. But the flame stayed lit. He reared back and tossed it toward the gas-slicked grass. Marcus twisted from the ground and kicked upward. The Zippo arced off course, spinning midair before clattering harmlessly against the pavement. Then came the voice. "Police are on the way," Ava shouted, her voice cracking but loud. But Rex didn't flinch. He lunged. Marcus braced for impact, still crouched, but he was too slow. Rex's fist slammed into his shoulder, sending him sprawling backward. The pain hit instantly, dull and deep, old scar tissue flaring open. Ava screamed. Maye moved. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded baton, extending it with a sharp snap as she stepped in front of Ava. One of the younger bikers surged toward the stand, but Maye swept low, catching his ankle with a precise, surgical twist. He hit the ground with a grunt, dust flying from his jacket as he landed on his side. Ava dropped to her knees beside Marcus, dragging him back behind the stand, away from the gas-soaked grass. He winced, clutching his shoulder, but nodded once to say he was still in the fight. Across the street, a screen door banged open. 2 figures sprinted across the lawn: Carlos, the tattooed barista from the corner cafe, and Mr. Langley, a retired firefighter who'd lived on Briarwood longer than anyone. Carlos tackled one biker from behind, locking his arms around the man's chest as Langley grabbed his legs. They wrestled him down together. The rest of the street had come alive. Lights flared in windows. Phones filmed from porches. Shadows moved at every corner. The neighborhood had not just woken up, it had drawn a line. Rex turned, eyes darting. His men were outnumbered now. Not by fighters, but by witnesses. And then, the sound changed. Not the low hum of engines. Not the scrape of boots. But sirens. 3 cruisers tore into view from the far end of the block, red and blue lights strobing across every surface. Tires screeched as they braked hard in front of the house. Officers spilled out, weapons drawn, voices booming. Hands in the air. Drop everything. Step away from the child. Rex didn't move fast enough. An officer grabbed him by the arm and slammed him against the hood of a cruiser. His cheek met the metal with a dull clang. Gasoline fumes still clung to his shirt. Maye exhaled, slowly. Ava knelt behind the stand, shaking, one hand still pressed to Marcus's back. The baton lay beside Maye's foot, streaked with dirt. Cameras rolled. Neighbors stood still. And under the stadium light of one determined block, the threat was finally over. For now. The video had already reached 2 million views by sunrise. Shot from a second-story window across the street, it opened with a harsh glow of floodlights, a gang of bikers frozen mid-motion, and a silver-haired woman standing calmly beside a 12-year-old girl. The caption read, *Silver-haired woman uses smart tech to protect girl from biker gang. You won't believe what happens next at *. By the time the cruisers pulled away from Briarwood Street, the story had gone statewide. Police officers moved efficiently, voices low but urgent, as they photographed the gasoline trail, collected the Zippo, and recorded statements. Rex Dobbs sat handcuffed on the curb, shirt stained, jaw tight. His crew, bruised, winded, silent, lined up behind him like statues in disgrace. Maye stood just a few feet away, arms folded, expression composed. She waited for the officer to finish reading charges before stepping forward, holding up her phone. "If I may," she said, her tone even. She opened the Georgia Legal Code and began reading aloud. Robbery by intimidation. Georgia Code, Title 16, Section 8 to 43. A person commits the offense of robbery when, with intent to commit theft, he or she takes property of another from the person or immediate presence of another by intimidation, by threat or coercion, or by placing such person in fear of immediate serious bodily injury. She lowered the screen. Her gaze never left Rex's face. That's the statute. And that's exactly what happened here. Rex didn't respond. His eyes flicked away, toward the stand, the crowd, the blinking lights. But there was no room left to maneuver. Not with ring cameras recording from 4 different angles. Not with 12 witnesses. Not with a girl still standing tall beside a man with a wrapped shoulder and a cane tucked under one arm. Ava stepped forward then. She had changed shirts, her old one was stained with juice and dust, but her expression was sharper than ever. Clear. Certain. "I'll testify," she said. Her voice didn't tremble. May looked at her, just for a moment, then nodded slowly. Officer Ramirez finished his report and motioned for Rex to stand. The biker obeyed without a word. The cuffs stayed tight around his wrists as 2 officers walked him to the back of the cruiser. He didn't resist. But as he passed May, he paused just long enough to whisper under his breath. "This was never your fight." May tilted her head slightly. "You made it mine," she said. Then she added, louder, for all to hear, "Never mistake silence for submission." The back door of the cruiser closed with a solid thud. Ava watched it roll down the street until the red and blue lights faded into darkness. No fear in her eyes now. Only fire. The street had quieted again, but this time it wasn't silence born of tension. It was the kind that settles after a storm, the kind that lets people breathe. A soft hum came from porch lights and distant cicadas, broken now and then by the clink of tools and the gentle murmur of neighbors who hadn't yet gone to sleep. Marcus sat on a wooden bench in the yard, his jacket draped across his lap, shoulder exposed beneath the sleeve of a torn shirt. His arm hung stiff at his side, a fresh bruise already blooming across the muscle. He didn't complain. May knelt beside him, a roll of bandage in her hand, her movements quiet and practiced. She had cleaned the area with gentle dabs, then checked for swelling, asking only once if he felt dizzy. He'd shaken his head with a tight smile. "Marine training didn't include batons to the shoulder," he muttered. "No," May said, winding the bandage in neat circles. "But it did give you the instinct to take a hit and stay standing." She tied the last loop, her hands pausing for just a second. "Calcium heals bones," she said softly. "But kindness heals fear." Marcus looked at her, then let out a quiet breath. "You always talk like that." "Only when it's true." A few yards away, the remnants of Ava's stand had been cleared. The scorched patch of grass where the gasoline had landed had been dug out by a neighbor with a shovel, replaced with fresh topsoil from a shared gardening bin. The HeartSmart hydration stand stood once more, rebuilt faster than before, with stronger planks and steel brackets anchoring its corners. Carlos had returned with 2 small flags he'd printed himself, laminated signs that read HeartSmart Scholarship in bold letters. One flew above the counter, the other was planted next to the sidewalk. Monica stood at the porch steps, one hand pressed to her mouth, the other gripping the railing. Her eyes glistened as she watched her daughter walk across the lawn. Ava didn't say anything. She didn't need to. She peeled a new sign from its backing and pressed it onto the face of the stand. The letters were clear, hand-drawn in her careful, determined script. "Open 9 a.m. Every dream matters." Someone strung up the LED lights again. This time, they stayed on even after the work was done. They cast a soft glow over the lawn, warm and golden, like string lanterns at a street festival. It didn't feel like aftermath anymore. It felt like something beginning. May stepped back, wiping her hands on a cloth. Ava looked up at her. "Do you think anyone will come?" May smiled gently. "They're already here." The morning came gently, golden and cool, as if the world itself had agreed to start over. Sunlight spilled across Briarwood Street, glinting off rooftops and car hoods, catching in the dew still clinging to blades of grass. By 7:30, the first customer had arrived. By 8, the line stretched down the block. Ava stood behind her rebuilt stand, hair pulled into a tight braid, her red apron crisp and clean. The wooden counter gleamed under a fresh coat of polish. The handwritten sign still clung to its front panel, open 9 a.m., every dream matters, now surrounded by paper hearts and glitter pens added by neighborhood kids. The air buzzed with conversation and camera shutters. A news van idled at the corner, its satellite dish rotating toward the sky. Reporters moved gently between the crowd, but never interrupted the line. Something unspoken held them back. Near the front stood 2 nurses from Atlanta, each in teal scrubs and white sneakers, one holding out a crisp $100 bill. "We saw you on TikTok," one said, smiling as Ava filled her cup. "Figured we'd drive up before our shift started. Worth every mile." Ava tried to refuse the money at first, but the nurse waved her off. "This isn't payment," she said. "It's gratitude." Behind them, a school principal, a retired judge, and a college student in a Howard sweatshirt waited quietly, all with bills folded in their palms. Every face was different, every reason the same. By noon, a small folding table near the porch overflowed with donations. Marcus sat beside it, shoulders still stiff, marking totals on a clipboard. His handwriting was slow but steady. 51,000. And rising. From the porch, May watched it all unfold, her gaze steady, her posture quiet. In her hand was a single paper cup, untouched. The message wrapped around it in looping blue ink, "Pass the kindness on," and she turned it slowly in her palm. Ava glanced up and caught her eye. She smiled, then nodded once, as if to say, "I remember." At that moment, the camera crews turned toward the street as a young boy approached the stand. He looked no older than 6, his shoes slightly too big, his eyes wide beneath a frayed baseball cap. He clutched a crumpled dollar in his hand. Ava crouched to meet him. "Thirsty?" she asked. The boy nodded, then held out the dollar without a word. Ava gently pushed his hand back, poured one last cup of watermelon mint juice, and wrote a single line on it before handing it over. "For the next dreamer." He took it with both hands, looked at it like it held magic, and then smiled. May's breath caught. The sun had shifted now, casting long shadows across the lawn, bathing the stand in soft gold. Someone played music from a portable speaker. Laughter rippled through the crowd. The fear that had once haunted this street was nowhere to be found. Just before closing, Ava turned to the camera nearest her. She wiped her hands on her apron, adjusted the collar of her shirt, and looked straight into the lens. Her voice was clear, her eyes steady. "When it's my turn," she said, "I'll be the one who steps in." Then she turned back to her stand and began cleaning up, cup by cup, a quiet smile on her face as the world around her kept watching.